The webinar tonight or today, depends on the time you have there, is basically is talking about the applications of blockchain. So what I'm going to do today in 1 hour is to go over some of the applications, which we're going to spend most of our time talking about it. At the same time, I'm going to go over simple definitions of blockchain to make sure that everybody is up to the same level here. And I hope that will help, clarifying some of the information about blockchain. So it is. We are talking about 10 plus blockchain applications. I'm going to be talking about more than 10. First, I would like to thank Northwestern Polytechnic University for their support in this series of seminars and webinars. They actually the people who provided everything here. You see the tools and the staff and the time and the space. So thanks to them for their help, and more to come. We have more of this coming to the to the picture here. Let me also I'm going to ask everybody one more time to turn off their cameras. You don't need the video because I see a lot of you have their videos here. Okay, please turn off your cameras. You don't need your camera, please. Okay, just to cross that one, so because it's covering some of the space on the screen. Okay, so let me do this before I go through this. I'm going to see if I can just go and do that. Okay, so I think I have any control on this. That's the cameras is everywhere. Okay, that's fine. Okay, good. Okay, in this case, let's go back to the sharing, and then we'll take it from there. Okay. Okay, a little bit about my background in the previous screen, which is talking a little bit about it, and that will help in understanding why I'm doing why I'm working on this field. I have 2 books so far. One of them is coming in August, and the other one is already in the market published in November of 2018. The Internet of Things, smart Internet of Things using secure and smart Internet of Things using blockchain and AI. The other one is specifically on blockchain technologies, and it's going to be out in August. Okay, until we get this one. Okay, one of the most important concept here about dealing with technologies like blockchain, as it is starting and it is really picking up the steam and the interest of so many people, is to understand that you have to be able to explain it in a very simple way to people so they can understand it. And this is my philosophy when I'm talking about blockchain. I have to put it in a way where everybody can understand it, and they can take it and then apply it to whatever information they have, whatever information they want. And blockchain itself is part of what I call the IBAC, which is the hot technologies for 2019 and after that and beyond. It's not just only 2019. If somebody asks you, and I've been asked that question lately, about what are the technologies for the future, at least for the 5 to 10 years from now, you will see that in all the stats and all the surveys that we see them. The 4 technologies I'm talking about them: the Internet of Things, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. They're at the top. They're always at the top, and they're interrelated. I mean, the concept of looking at IBAC or looking at the Internet of Things, how it's interact with blockchain and artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, can be explained with this slide. And I remember when I presented that one in a seminar 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, it makes sense to so many people. IoT feels, blockchain remembers, and AI thinks, and cybersecurity protects. And if you have this in mind, you will understand it, and it's going to be much clearer for you to look at it from a perspective of how can I really bring everything together. It is talking about the human senses: feels, remembers, thinks, protects, all of these things, and each and every one of them is very important. If the if the internet itself, not the internet of thing, is all about connectivity, then blockchain, excuse me, is all about trust. So keep this in mind when we're talking about the applications. When we talk about the internet, we're talking about connectivity. When we're talking about blockchain, we're talking about the trust. The simple definition of blockchain, if you can see it on Wikipedia, it's a little bit twisted, a little bit, too much words there. But at the same time, it makes sense for the people who already know something about it. My best definition for blockchain, and it's given to a professor, professor from MIT. It is the combination of cryptography and human logic. Cryptography is the encryptions. Human logic is the consensus. We're talking about it, which we're going to talk about it in blockchain consensus. You have it proof of X, and how does that add more value to the blockchain? But let's put this one together, and this is something will make it much easier for us. I mean, I divided into certain parts about the blockchain that's going to make it much easier for you to understand. When you talk about blockchain as a distributed ledger shared by all participants, so this is one concept. Every piece of information in the ledger is secure and encrypted, and this is only can be decrypted and by using appropriate private key. Each participant have in the node or in the nodes, they have an identical copy of the ledger, but the contents is only available for those have the proper keys. So this is where a lot of time you're going to find yourself, especially for fields like the healthcare, where HIPAA will plays a big part of resisting the applications of blockchain, because if there are multiple copies, multiple nodes, how can you secure the privacy of the patients? Same thing with FERPA when you're talking about the education here in the United States. The laws are very clear about it, which is you need to have privacy and security of the information you have about the students, and you can apply it to the other fields, whatever regulations they have. But the contents, nobody can see it except the people who have the proper keys. And the new information only added, and you cannot remove the old, overwriting the old information. And this is the essence of the blockchain, which is once you have it, it's there, even if it's wrong. And we have stories, we have incidents where there was actually mistakes have done, or somebody entered the wrong information, what I call the first mile problem, which is garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you enter there in the blockchain is still the same, for them. If you program it, and if it's wrong, then you cannot change it unless you go with a hard fork concept in blockchain, where you are exiting the process and you're starting a new process. And the consensus protocols are also to validate the new block. How can you reward people for working with you and making sure that the information, the first block, the genesis block created, and after that one, how the blocks themselves is really added after that. At the top of that, if you're dealing with the recent technologies, the recent versions of blockchain, you're going to be dealing with smart contracts. And they are programs, and blockchain is also a software, and smart contracts are softwares. They're programs that automatically triggered when a set of predefined conditions met. 5 components of the blockchain, and I remember when this is actually part of my questions when I'm testing my student, whether it is here at Northwestern Polytechnic or San Jose State or Stanford, we talk about it. I mean, the components of blockchain, and each one of the 5 components has a big meaning: cryptography, peer-to-peer network, consensus mechanism, ledger, and validity rules. And that goes back to the very definition of blockchain when we talk about cryptography plus human logic. And you can divide the 2 categories I just mentioned, and you see which one is which, and that's going to make more sense when you have it, have it linked to the definition. If you never he heard or seen the hashing or the or the encrypting of information, this is what we have. You have a simple word. We use the SHA-256, and that's the hash sum we have. And this is the information. You see it in the node. If you are part of the network, that's what you see. You see this kind of nodes. And this is just a simple diagram, shows you the relationship between the different blocks. The first one, block 0, 1, 2. And the key thing here is you can look at them and you will find out that it's exactly the same, except that the information from the previous block is stored in the next block and encrypted and hashed, and the same thing for the next one. So if anything happened to the previous one or the one after that one, it's going to impact whatever after that. And this is the security you are getting by by using the blockchain, the blockchain technology. And whatever you see on the screen, the block 0, 1, 2 up to 1,000, there are multiple copies of exactly the same blocks in different nodes. So if you manage to convince one node to change the information, then you do the rest of that. You have to do the same thing for the rest of the for the nodes. Okay. This is just an example of a programming for the blockchain. It's to give you, and if you look closely at it, you're going to see that we are actually looking at the same 5 components I mentioned about blockchain. Or the same thing goes with the timestamp, with the hash, and transactions, which is the data. Smart contract is also same thing. They have their programs, their software, and this is just a simple example about certain condition has to be satisfied for the smart contract to be executed. The blockchain have 3 tracks, and this is valid since I started talking about blockchain last year. Three tracks. The first one is the R&D track. The other one is the immediate business benefit track, which is big now. We started with the first one where everything there is talking about research papers, informations, and trying to figure out what is this technology. Now we are talking about more than just pure R&D. We're talking about the benefit, the business benefit track. And that is 2 parts. The first one, we need to understand it. The second one is how is that going to help us in our business. The last one is what's next, which is the long-term transformational potential for the blockchain. The types of excuse me, blockchain, the most famous list of types, the private and the public and the federated or the hybrid. The private one is the one that's used by the companies in track 2, and the public is the one that we're talking about when we are using Bitcoin and Ethereum, where you can be a node at any time. You don't need permission to join the network. While in the private, you have to have permission. That's why sometimes they call it permissioned and permissioned networks. And the hybrid is mixed. In certain transaction, you want to have it on the public, and certain transactions you want to have it in the private. Now, some statistics that will give you an insight about the activities of blockchain here in the Silicon Valley. By 2018, by the end of that year, we have 36 excuse me, blockchain startup has been acquired. 30% of them came from the Bay Area. We are the biggest incubator for blockchain technologies. If you are in the Silicon Valley, there is no way for you to sit with engineers or with people who are doing any kind of development or startup without hearing that word blockchain. It's a buzzword, it's a keyword for them to get funding, at the same time to show that they are really applying the latest technology of security. Now, blockchain jobs as a developer, it's number 1. Now, emerging job in 2018 by LinkedIn, and it grew by 33 times. In 2018, the survey said that only 3%, let me add 3.3% of companies worldwide had actually deployed the blockchain in production. And there is a reason for this, because there's so many obstacles we have when it comes to the applications of the blockchain. And I'm going to talk about some of the challenges. It's not just technology itself. It's actually 3 things going on. And I use a filter. I use actually a set of filters to look at any trend. And that will help people understand why some of the technologies can make it through and some of them can't. When you have a new trend, you have to go through 3 stages or 3 lenses or 3 filters. The first one is the technology. Do we have the technology? Do we have the software, the hardware for that? If you pass through that one, you go through the business, where what's in it for me, why people want to invest in this kind of technology or this new trend. And the last one is society. And society has 2 parts. The first one is the government. The second one is the users. What kind of protection the users will have, the users will accept it or not, and the government, any regulations that will slow down this process. I'll give you an example, and this is really recent. I was looking at the news about Facebook starting or thinking about having their own cryptocurrency, and that will be used in with WhatsApp. And WhatsApp outside the United States is big. Like WeChat, we have it at in China. We have WhatsApp. We have 1.5, I think, billion people using WhatsApp, and I use it. But it's used for more than just the communications. It's used for everything. If you ever dealt with somebody outside the United States, they're gonna say you find that using WhatsApp as their e-commerce platform. And this is what happened. Now, Facebook looked at it and say, why not have our own cryptocurrency where people can buy and sell within the community of WhatsApp using the cryptocurrency of Facebook. This is something I will mention at the end of the presentation. Something called, I don't know what the name of the cryptocurrency, but it could be a face coin. That could be the name for it. The Senate, the U.S. Senate, on May 9th, sent a letter to Mark Zuckerberg, and I have a copy of that letter, and I posted it on my LinkedIn and on my Twitter account, asking them what is the impact of cryptocurrency initiative they have now on the consumer privacy, security, and safety. And this is the 3rd filter. Remember the 3 filters: the technology, the business, the society, and now we're talking about the government. Now the technology could just collapse at any one of the 3 stages, and this is what's going on with the 3.3%, out of implemented all over the world. It is, as a blockchain, it is at the starting the growth stage in marketing and the product life cycle. Excuse me, which is a great news for so many people, and that's going to help. Okay, okay. I will handle all the chats and the information after I'm done with the with this, because I see somebody trying to reach me here. So after I finish, I will answer all the questions about it. So in 2019, what is perspective or the understanding of CEOs and the C-level about blockchain? This is really explained everything. We're going from explain this to me to prove it to me. We're going from explain the technology to me to show me. I'm talking about working conference room pilots, where people just now talking about this is how we're going to apply it to our to our company, and how this one going to benefit us from that part. Okay, I think somebody sent me something here. Okay, thank you. I will check that one in a second. Okay, just give me a second. Thanks. Okay. There are 4 ways for blockchain to actually be used to avoid the failing concept of the pilot production, and there are 4 of them, and they really make sense. And once you have this in your mind, and it's really clear to you that it's one of 4, first use case is guaranteed and verified data dissemination. This will be one thing. So if that's your business, to guaranteed and verify data that's sent from one place to the other, that is one use case. The second one is asset tracking, and this is big for the supply chain management, and then transfer of the assets when you're talking about real estate, talking about buying and selling, all these kind of things, which has the concept of you are transferring the ownership, payments. The fourth one is certify claims, like the certificates, where I finished my degree at a big school, or and the case I'm going to talk about it is not just only MIT. There is a lot of schools done applying this kind of certificate where it's certified, that you don't have to worry about it. I know that some of the online companies, they're using this concept to verify that this person is the person who finished the degree and this is his or her degree. Now, the whole thing started with this paper, and this paper is by that famous mysterious person or persons, Satoshi Nakamoto, and we still, we still want to know if this person really even exists, or it is a person, or it's a government, or what is that? Who's that person? Simple visualization of the concept of centralized network we have now compared to the distributed one. This is the, the first one is what we have now. And the last one is you're talking about the concept of blockchain. And this is the progress we are seeing. I'm not going to go through the history, because one thing I want you to know about it, that blockchain is not new. The concept of blockchain, the name is new. The concept been around, for many years, and it's just evolved and use the new technologies and new tools we have. In 2018 to 2019, we are talking about the implementation. We passed that period of trying to understand the concept, and the more proof of this one is, people now asking questions. Okay, how can I use this for this? And I remember that I received an email and from LinkedIn about one of my wonderful followers there. He was asking me, how can I use blockchain for matchmaking? Talking about the dating apps. How can you have this kind of security for this? And this for me, I don't have the quick answer for this, but it's not the right way of asking the question, because you have to understand the technology first, and then we'll see the applications. But that triggered something, in my head about an interview I had with ABC News last week, and exactly was in Friday last week. Somebody used this app which is called Tinder, which is for dating. A group of teenagers, they use it to meet people, and then they meet them just to take their money and take their cars and beat them up and rob them, and they use that. So, and when you look at the profile that the guy is actually looking at it, and there's no way for it to verify this is the real person. And and they have about 30 victims until one of the cameras, the public cameras, catch the events or what happened, that incident, and they cut those 4 people here. And this is local here in the Bay Area. And that made me think about it. How can we use blockchain for security in this case? Because that's and verifications. And how can apps like Tinder and the other apps that for matchmaking can use it, and not just for the dating, for identity verifications. There's some of the challenges we see with blockchain. I was looking at this diagram or this chart, and it's interesting. It's very interesting because this is recent. This was in September 2018. They have they did a survey, and they asked a lot of people about this, and about 600 organization executives. It's talking about not the engineers, they're talking about the executive who has the money to sign up for the project. Number one is their regulatory uncertainty. That's number one. And then lack of trust among users, because they don't understand it. You cannot, how can you understand something you don't understand? How can you trust something you cannot understand? How can you do that? So you have to understand it. So we have a lot of actually we have a lot of responsibility here, as to understand the concept or the technology before we can trust it. And this is why it's number 2. It's close to the regulation, and the regulation is big. And the example I gave you about the letter from the Senate, the U.S. Senate, about the cryptocurrency to Mark Zuckerberg. It's just another example about why regulation, which is the third filter, technology, business, and society, that can stop, can slow down, can create a lot of problems if you are not clear about it. And then you talk ability to bring network together, which is the implementation, separate blockchain networking together, and that's a fact because there's still, excuse me, we have few leaders in the field between IBM and, the big names, IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, and so on. And an ability to scale, that's another thing. IP property, it's the same concept. We talk about it. when I was talking about, okay, multiple copies of the same information and multiple nodes, I want to make sure that nobody is using it. And the audit and the compliance concern. Now, more challenges, scalability, processing time is a challenge because you have to update all the nodes. The bigger the network, the more the nodes you have, the more challenges you're going to have with this kind of with this kind of processing time and the processing power. That's consuming a lot of power. We have to be more, careful about this. And I wrote an article about AI can help blockchain, and you can find it on my LinkedIn. In that article, I specify a few steps that AI can help blockchain to be more smart about processing power and processing time. And this is where you see the overlap of the two technologies. Storage is not a big problem for us now because it's only 3% implementation. But later, down the road, if you have copies and copies and copies and copies of this, then you're gonna run into the problem of storage and regulations, as I mentioned. Also, the public perception is is another problem because blockchain is not Bitcoin. Everybody thinks it's the same. It's not. And when you mention blockchain, it's no cryptocurrency. So the public perception, and also the public perception about the criminal part of it. Criminals are using cryptocurrencies as part of their ransom operations. We don't have enough skilled staff, and this is the reality. And this is, I hope, anybody and everybody who's listening to this webinar and the other seminars to consider really updating their skills and learn about blockchain. You don't have to pay money to do that. There are free seminars all over the place, with platforms like Coursera, Udemy, and not Udacity. There are even with big schools like I'm talking about Harvard, MIT, and Stanford, and there are a lot of those classes where you can join them online and update your skills and know about the blockchain. First know about it, and then if you're really interested in going to the next level, you can start developing your own platform. Download Solidity, the smart contract. You can create blockchain with any programming language you want. You just learn it. JavaScript is the one that most used for that, and Ethereum has their own language, Geth, which is based on the Go language. So once you have it on your resume, it looks good, and also it's going to open the door for you. Because something, it's just starting, and that will be another great thing to do with filling this lack of skilled staff. First mile and last mile problem. The first mile is garbage in, garbage out. Last mile problem is after the data reach the destination, then people can modify this. We have no control on it. And the 51% attack is a reality. If you can convince 51% of the nodes to change the information, then you control the node. And it happened a few times. And recently, like 3 or 4 weeks, we have the same problem, 51% attack. Double spending is like, the example of this, just to clarify to you guys, some of the banks, and this is not the double spending in blockchain, but just to bring it closer to your mind about what is double spending. If you have a check, some of the banks will give you that feature of depositing the check using your phone, your smartphone, where you take a picture with their app and it's going to read the information and deposit. And they tell you you have to mark that check, so you're not going to go and deposit physically. If you go and deposit that one physically, this is double spending. So from one time, so you are depositing the same check twice, and this can happen because of the difference in processing time. So you're going to find that you can have 2 copies of the same transaction. And the last one is the stupid smart contracts. And there is a famous case of the DAO of the 50 million, and where there was a mistake in the smart contract, and they couldn't do anything about it. It's the money now in an account, nobody can touch it. The current solutions, very quickly, the current solution here are, they are not, this is not a comprehensive list, but it's what we have now. IBM is a leader in this, using their own Hyperledger fabric. There is a, and there is some kind of cooperation between Ethereum and JP Morgan Chase and they created something called Quorum. And then you talk about the Ethereum and Ripple and R3 Corda. All of them has their own specifications, from the type, whether it is private, whether it is public, to the governors who have control on the information, the throughput, which is very important. The Hyperledger, and this is why you see a lot of companies that go in with the IBM applications here. Why? Because the TPS, mean transactions per second, it's more than 2,000, which is great compared to the others. If you look at the others, you're talking about, and I can show you that on the mouse here, 2,000, more than 2,000. The rest is about 100 transactions per second, 20, 1,500 and 1,700 and so on, just approximately. There's no currency, no currency. The concept of currency is not a big deal for you if you are doing the private blockchain, because you can create the currency anytime. And this is one of the steps or the project that I ask my students, both at San Jose State and at Stanford Continue Studies, a department, to create their cryptocurrency. And each one of them will have their own coin with their name. And then the rest of this, the use of the smart contract and all of them, and the same thing, that kind of language is used for for the smart contract, and you will see that that's give you some kind of an insight about what's going on with the programming languages. Applications. Now let's talk about the application. This is what we are here for. It's the applications, and I think I have something like, if I'm not mistaken, let me look at that. Yeah, I have something like 20 minutes. I'm going to leave some time for the questions. For the applications, there are two categories for the applications. One of them is the record keeping. The other one is transactions. So the key blockchain use cases, they are fall in two fundamental categories: record keeping, static registries of data, high value assets, and transaction, dynamics registry. So we are talking about static and dynamic. The dynamic goes with the banking, with transactions going back and forth. And the other one is the static, is talking about, for example, you have a certificate, you have a real estate deeds, you have something that document's not going to change. It stays there. Record keeping use cases include the long-term safeguarding of data and your variable physical or digital assets, identity related to information about the individual, birth certificates, ID, all these kind of IDs used by the government is saved, is there. And it's not going to change because your birthday is going to change. Maybe the only thing that you'll have with your passport is your picture. That's going to be updated, but it's going to be a different story. Now, keep in mind this concept. If you can guarantee to the residents of a certain country that their information, which is all the vital data they have, their birth certificates, their for social security number or the national number or their driver license, saved in one place where it is saved, nobody can touch it. There is no need for replications and asking for it all the time. Every agency can access that information and get that information instead of you waiting online to get this verified, or bring 2 copies to verify that. Bring an invoice or a bill or something to do this. It's there. We verified once. We don't have to deal with it again. Save time, save staff, save frustrations, make things go and run. And I know that one country in Europe is actually implementing this kind of concept. Transaction use cases include keeping track of the data about frequent exchange of assets, real-time digital payments, and emergencies. So this will make it easy for you to understand the 2 categories. And then you look at your business, you look at your company, and you can say, my company falls under this category or the other category. And that's going to take you to the next level. Okay, now how can I implement blockchain in this case? Now, one of my favorite blockchain application is when it comes to IoT and AI. And this diagram explained it in much more clearer way here. Sensors, the IoT has four components: the sensor network, an IoT platform, and applications. And you need blockchain in each one of them. You need only AI when it comes to platform, IoT platform insights or processing. But the blockchain will be needed all the time. So this is how they interact with the blockchain and how they interact with IoT. The landscape, the landscape for the companies is really exciting. You're talking about corporations that running and big names. I mean, you can recognize all those names that really have their own blockchain departments, thousands of engineers doing it. And then you're talking about startups, and you're talking about platforms. You're talking also about the consortiums and the protocols used, pilots for the companies like UPS and FedEx and Walmart. All of these, the platform for the companies from the top is active. The startup is trying to catch up with that one. In the middle this is what we are missing. It's the small and the medium size companies are trying to understand the technology and go to the next level. But the big companies, they know there's a big, huge opportunity. Tencent, Huawei, Accenture, and Salesforce, all of them, they understand that blockchain is, and Oracle is catching up with that one, with the blockchain big time. One of the applications that I'm going to talk about in the retail is with the Walmart. Very nice article in the Wall Street Journal about it. And if you look at the picture, you're going to see that we are talking about IBM Food Trust. And this is their blockchain application, something called DAP. And this one is giving you the whole series and the whole steps and every store this product, excuse me, being through. So it's, so you know the food supply chain. So if anything happened with food poisoning or some kind of some kind of recall for that food, you know exactly from where it came. You don't have to shut down the whole network like what we are doing now, where restaurant is impacted, hotels impacted, consumers impacted. You just go to the source and and deal with the source itself and say, this is the source of this kind of contamination. This is where this trouble is coming from. Imagine the economics and and the saving we have, and the frustrations and the market disruption we have if we can have this kind of information available for us. The next one is talking about schools like MIT, how they issue their certificates using blockchain, where the employers who are really part of their blockchain can just get that information and verify it when the applicant apply for that job. You don't have to ask for a copy of transcript or diploma. And there are many companies working on this. One of them is CV Trust, and Accredible is also a famous company that deals with verifications of credentials. And you will see that, I know that schools like San Jose State, the company approached me, excuse me, Accredible, they approached me about, this project and the verification of the credentials. So yeah, just to see how they can apply it to the degree that you receive from a school like San Jose State with 37,000 students, and we're going to graduate on 22nd of May, about 8,000 students. The next one is advertising. I like this example and I use it all the time because that actually makes the whole thing much easier for us to realize the significance of the blockchain in some well-known industry like advertising and marketing. The buy-side transparency blockchain for auditing. So you have everything, copy of the contract, copy of the condition is there. Now we come to the implementation, which is the sell side. There's something called proof of view. Proof will have multiple points you have to go through. If you have somebody who is a famous YouTuber and that person, you will pay that person that fees or that loyalty, or if there are there are a million views for that episode. How would I make sure that it's a million and that views I have? And that the three conditions mentioned here make it much easier and more trustful. The concept of proof of view only record views from signed in users. So you have to sign in to be considered. So this will be number one. So that's going to identify how many people. Most people are only able to watch one video at a time. So if you open multiple, videos, that's not going to work. You have to watch one. The third one is they're going to take samples of the video at random time, and that all this when you add it together, and that's going to verify that this is a valid view. So if you get a million like this, and nobody will dispute it. And smart contract to document views and who gets paid. Supply chain is a big application of blockchain. So every step, and this is a wonderful startup called Statwig, and they're dealing with the shipment of fish from India to countries like the Philippines and Malaysia, and they have a lot of issues with, but 40% of the fish they send there is rotting. Why? Because it is there is no information about the temperature of the food, and there is no follow-up of this, and it's all handwritten, and people can modify this. But if you have everything on the blockchain, you enter it, it's done. There are multiple copies of it. You cannot change it. And this is another way for for the food industry or the supply chain. DocuSign is a prime example of one of the categories we're talking about when we talk about blockchain, where your information will be saved, nothing will be changed. Yes, I have a PDF file of it, and I use DocuSign many times. So after I finish, I download the PDF, and that's my copy. I want to make sure that nobody will change it, because if it's in blockchain, whatever I have in my hands is the same everybody has on the system. Starbucks is doing two things: installing something called buckets payment software that will use their own cryptocurrency. The second one is they have a supply chain pilot where they deal directly with the farmers. They make sure that the money goes to the farmers instead of enriching the people in the middle, and the farmers will get nothing basically. Ticketmaster, you can imagine how many problems people face when it comes to tickets for for example, the Warriors now they are in the playoffs, or the movies that we have 2 weeks ago with the Avengers, where you have some fake tickets that sold to people with thousands of dollars. One of the good applications of the blockchain is helping the refugees, and I looked at this case, which is really a fantastic case of using the blockchain. In this camp in Jordan, the refugees, they don't have any IDs. Kids born, there is no birth certificates. There's nothing to identify them. They left their country, they have no ID. So what they have done, they use the facial recognition, special features, fingerprints, and that's your ID. And that's stored in a blockchain, and where you can, if you want to go and get some support or help, if you want to go and finish some paper, all what you're going to do, just look at the camera, and that will identify that you are the same person. A great application. The United Nations is actually running this kind of program, because paperwork, people can change it, being bribed, a lot of things can happen when it comes to paperwork. Return drugs in the healthcare, about $10 billion, $7 to $10 billion, which is the value of the return drugs here. I want to make sure that this drug came from my company, not from somebody else. So nobody alter that one and send me something which is not mine. So SAP is big on in this field. They have proof of concept, and that's proof of concept is SAP Pharma blockchain proof of concept app. The name of the app is ATTP, Advanced Track and Trace for the Pharma and it has a unique identifier for each drug. And the unique identifiers are the item number based on a certain standard, serial number, batch number, and expiration date. Once you have all this information stored in the blockchain, multiple copies, nobody can modify it. When I receive it back, I can check if this is a real, drug that I have to refund or I have to take back. The clinical trials, also a big problem because of the updated information, because a lot of people sign up for that or dealing with the patients without having up-to-date information. And I can give you some examples of this. The FDA reports that almost 10% of the trial they monitor feature some kind of issues related to the consent. The patient doesn't know or not give his or her consent. For example, a written informed consent, an approved form, the institution review board protocol is not revised. All of these things has to be confirmed and has to be valid and saved, and nobody can change it. Same thing goes with the transparency and traceability for the consent. Smart contract can be, be bound to protocol revisions, such as any change in the trial protocols, where if you change, it stays there and everybody knows about it. The next technology is the insurance, and the insurance itself is a big thing about preserving the information. Smart contract is a big use in there, and you can see that the greatest application for insurance is through smart contracts. Invalid claims are not going to be there. Multiple claims will be rejected because you already have that claim. And all of this information you enter, it's there, it stays there. Multiple copies, nobody can change them. So it's allowed the consumers and the insurer to manage claims in a truly transparent and secure manner, knowing that if it's changed, it's going to stay the same. It's nothing. Nobody will modify that, and nobody will abuse it. Nobody will file multiple claims. Nobody will file those fraudulent claims. The real estate, the statistic about the homeowners in the United States, they sell his or her home every 5 to 7 years. That's the average. And the average American, they move about 12 times during his or her lifetime. Instead of producing the same documentation again and again and again and again and going through the process, why not have the same information stored somewhere, safe, and changed, and then people can access that information, real estate agents, loan, originated, companies, mortgage companies, and then you can add more information to it. You're not going to change it. You're going to say, okay, I have a new job. My income is now this. All these information will be added this one in one, in one network where they can access that. They cannot change. They can just look at it, and they can verify that, yeah, he or she works at that place. Finish this. This is the value. And that will reduce the redundancy. If I apply for a loan at a company and apply for another at a company, I have to produce the same documents to all of them and do the same process 3 times. Now we're talking about real estate. The same thing goes with this. Instead, it would expedite the home sales. It's going to make it quicker. Verify the finances, especially if your bank is part of another blockchain network and your assets is part of it. So the trust is there that whatever information I get there, I don't have to double check that. I don't have to call the employer and ask them about it. I don't have to have a letter from the employer saying he or she employed from that time to that time. This is what they have. And reduce frauds thanks to its encryption and offer transparency throughout the entire selling process and the purchasing process. So that's another part for the real estate. Media. I brought an example of 2 companies, something called Decent, a platform announcing that it launched something called Public. This one is an amazing platform where you can deal directly with the content creator, the creative writers. Instead of going through big names, Sony, Warner Brothers, you can go directly to them and get that contents for them. Netflix can contact them and get that direct to them instead of having an agent and that person has a cut or a middle person here. Comcast Advanced Advertising Group, also they have a new technology that allows company to make ad buys on both broadcast and over the top through blockchain technology. So that's another example for for the use of the blockchain in media. Energy. The energy itself is also a challenging part of it, but uh, monitoring, metering, billing, clearing process will be documented and stored. Documentation of of ownership, asset management, guarantees, emission allowances, renewable energy certificates. All of this one is verifiable and it is safe. So this will be another application for this. For the record management, whether, and this is the example I gave about a country that they can have the birth and this certificate, marriage certificate, property transfer, all of these things for the citizen will be saved on the blockchain and accessed by many agencies. So those agencies will have the same information. There's no need for you and for verification steps. It's all saved and it's verified and it is available for people to look at it. And Facebook, and this is what, and I think one of you have a smart comment about this, and let me see that one. I think, yeah, the chat. Let me just read this one because I have to. Facebook plus Bitcoin, the Facebit. That could be the one thing for it. If you can send this one to Mark Zuckerberg as a name for their cryptocurrency. Their cryptocurrency is coming. Yes, and there's a question from CK. Yes, it's recorded, and I'm going to share it within 2-3 days. It's going to be on YouTube. So Facebook with Facecoin, they're hiring. I count 25 positions by Facebook in the field of blockchain, and they're hiring more people now. Any questions? And any questions, please? I think I have about 7 to 8 minutes for questions. This is my information. Please feel free to join me on LinkedIn. The number is old here, 35K. I have 36 so far, and this is my Twitter handle. If you have any questions, let me know.